Hey trainers, welcome back! You're at Pewter City Gym as we take another look at some residents of our Fakemon region, Sola. Hey, if you enjoy Fakemon and Pokemon content, I'd really love it if you could like and subscribe. I post new Fakemon videos every month and a lot of Let's Play content, so if that sounds like your jam, please, you are welcome here. Anyway, so far we've done a wacky Rotom form, starters in green, red, and blue flavors, a couple hangry little caterpillars, and a rodent with an explosive personality. Not to mention, I've talked a little bit about the region itself and introduced you to this fine young man, as well as giving him his very own spin-off series. Today we're carrying on down the list of Pokemon as you'd probably expect and going for the regional Route 1 bird. The birds you encounter in the early parts of the regional layout really help set the tone for the region. Look at any of these little birds and you know exactly where in the Pokemon world you are. Also, if you watch the anime, they tend to fairly consistently wind up on Ash's team. Except in Alola, but he has Round Boy Rowlet, so I can forgive him for not snagging a Pick-a-Peck. I mean, to be fair, his Rowlet was raised by Pick-a-Peck, Trumbeak, and Toucanon. He also doesn't have a Rookity in the Journeys anime, but I honestly don't fault him for that, considering Journeys takes place all over the Pokemon world, not specifically only in Galar, and he does have Surfetch'd. They tend to be Pokemon he actually evolves, or he caught evolved to begin with, and they'll usually make it all the way to his League Challenge. Go back for Pidgeot, Ash. You've been living in Kanto, there's really no excuse at this point. Unlike the regional rodent, the regional bird usually maintains its usefulness as a battler well into the late game in most regions, with a diverse move pool and decent stats. They also usually look really cool. Corviknight is one of the best designs, but even earlier entries into the series like Pidgeot and Swellow look great. So, iconic creatures by design, good battlers with some brand recognition in regards to the anime, a lot to live up to in terms of design. No pressure, Jim. So, off to the lab we go. So, like with the rodents, there's a massive number of small birds that live out here that could easily be wrangled into that Route 1 bird aesthetic. A lot of them, though, already have representation. Crows, pigeons, swallows, seagulls. I obviously don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's also larger birds that could work. Ducks and geese, though they already have some representation in the Pokedex. Well, Pokemon sure does love its ducks, so what's the problem with adding one more? There's also other water birds, too. Coots are a favorite of mine especially, and I was immediately drawn to dust doves, which are pretty common out here and very much like my beloved pigeons. In the end, though, I went with something smaller and simpler for the first stage. The sparrow. And yes, I know we already have a Spearow, but it's really not based on a sparrow, or any kind of finch at all. It's just a generic predatory bird more than anything. In fact, Pidgey looks more like a sparrow than Spearow, and it looks way more like a sparrow than it looks like a pigeon. Gen 1 was kinda loose with its animal representation. Anyway, I picked sparrows because they're common and cute and I love feeding them. Where I live now, they're scarcer and more skittish than in New Zealand where I grew up. At the beach, you see almost more sparrows than seagulls. One of my best friends and I would drive out there, get fish and chips, and feed the birds, seeing which species would eat more chips than the other. And when I was going to art school, there was a park near campus that I'd eat lunch at most days. I'd abandoned my human friends so they wouldn't see me lobbing handfuls of crumbs around myself so I'd be surrounded by sparrows. I got them to perch on and eat from my hand more than a few times on days when the park was pretty empty. Truly, living my Disney princess dreams. Speaking of Disney, the sparrows at Disneyland are actually pretty friendly. I feel like a lot of people there feed them, so they're used to being treated kindly. Anyway, the sketching process went in a variety of directions, but eventually I settled on one concept. And as with most designs, they're better when a couple of elements come together. There's two other things I wound up including. So, hey, did anyone else ever notice that between several regions of birds, we have most of a set of card suits? It started with Tailo having a diamond shape. Next generation, Starly has a club. The generation after that, Pidove has a heart, but we don't get a spade. Pick-a-Peck's kind of the closest with the shape of its head, but it doesn't quite fit. So I smacked this little bird on the face with a shovel, and now it has a spade shape to function like the sparrow's rubber mask. The other influence I wanted to include was a cute little candy out here that's popular around Easter time, the Marshmallow Peep. It's a little marshmallow bird that's colored with sugar in a couple of very bright colors, but yellow is the most iconic. They're round and cute like baby birds, so I thought it was a perfect element to pair up with my sparrow. That mostly comes through in the coloring. Sparrows are a species with a fair amount of gender-based dimorphism. Males have a dark mask on their face and a more light-colored belly. Females are a little more muted all over and lack the mask. I didn't want to go that different with the colors though. In the end, I decided to do two different colored masks. one for each of them. One baby blue and one a dark purple. The lighter color will be for the female and the darker color for the male, so to sort of mimic the real-life inspirations. Blue is also a color that peeps come in, and purple is just a nice complementary color to yellow, and dark purple on light yellow always looks really striking. Besides, it works well for Nidoran. I just didn't want to do blue for boys and pink for girls. Misty pointed out that they look like they're wearing little yellow raincoats, and now I can't unsee it. Here we have Pipip, the chirp Pokemon. They're clumsy flyers, and so usually hang around near where humans live to make begging for food easier. Because they're brightly colored and cute, this is a strategy that has worked well for them. Sad to say they were leaner and meaner before developing this habit. Here are your base stats, and here's a learned moves list. The name comes from a combination of Pip and Peep. Two sound small birds are known to make, and Peep being the name of the candy that partially inspired the design. Pip often refers to something that's considered small, as seen in the word pipsqueak, which Pipip kind of sounds like. Also, pips are another term for seeds, so something small that will grow into something bigger. The next stage I wanted to base a little more on the hooded oriole. It's a songbird common in the southwestern USA, but they're definitely harder to spot than sparrows. I've only ever managed to photograph one, and even then only briefly. And I did so with my old phone, which died completely, so that photo's lost to time. Like male sparrows, they have striking black markings, and like the humble Peep, they're also a bright, cheerful yellow. Seems like a perfect middle stage. Because I had a pretty set idea of the way that I wanted them to look, the sketches are mostly simple variations on a theme and playing with proportions and poses. The final design is one I'm actually really proud of. Because I wanted to transition from the idea of chirping for food all the way to actually singing for it, I gave it a slightly more regal look with a swooping set of chest feathers that end in ruffles that also sort of emulate the shape of cartoon teeth. Because the prior form has part of its inspiration in a chewy candy, I figured this was kind of fitting. For the colors, I wanted to darken the yellow into something warmer looking that would provide a better contrast with the blue of the female, while still creating contrast with the dark purple of the male. I went with the same burned orange color as did Ene. Here we have Ariel, the a cappella Pokemon. The song of this bird Pokemon is known far and wide as one of the sweetest in the region. Instead of begging for food from people, it will generally try to entertain them and actually earn a share of whatever they're eating, singing for its supper, as it were. Stats are here, and moves are here. The name is a portmanteau of Oriole and Aria. Oriole being the bird inspiration, and Aria being a solo vocal performance, often from an opera. Aria is also air in Italian, and this is a flying type. For the final form, I wanted it to become a bird of prey. That's the way this stuff usually goes. Pidgey goes from snacking on berries in the park to stealing people's Magikarps after all. Being as my initial design is a sparrow, I decided to play off the pun, bring things full circle, and base the final form on the American kestrel, otherwise known as the sparrowhawk. These are small birds of prey, hence the name comparing them to sparrows, but they also have pretty striking coloration and patterning, so they look really cool. And they do live out here in Southern California, even if I've never managed to get any photos of them myself. I took the soft, rounded tooth patterning of the prior form and turned the dial all the way up to predator level, because as it swoops down to snag its prey, about the only thing this poor unfortunate soul is going to spot is this giant set of faux teeth. Scary stuff. This is in part because this Pokemon is going to be a lot smaller than other predatory birds. It still needs something of an intimidation factor despite its smaller size. The design incorporates a higher level of contrast, adding in some black accents and utilizing both the downy yellow of Pipip and the darker orange of Ariel, while retaining the purples and blues of the alternate colored forms. The underside of the wings becomes barred, much like many real raptor species. And here we have Sorprano, the raptor Pokemon. Sorprano are small but fiercely territorial predators. Despite their size, they can eat several bada boom in one day. Once this is accomplished, they will nap all afternoon as their prey digests. Their cries are melodic and beautiful, but any smaller Pokemon in Sola who hears it knows they had better find cover quickly. A little grisly? Perhaps, but I wouldn't say it's any more gross than Pidgeot scooping Magikarp from the water. Base stats are here, and here's your learned moves list. The name is a portmanteau of Sor and Soprano. Soaring is a mode of flight where birds catch air currents and use them to navigate the skies without flapping their wings. You often see birds of prey doing this, as they don't like to waste precious energy flapping when it's not necessary. Soprano is another musical term. It's used to describe the highest of the 4 types of singing voice and the person who can produce that high-pitched type of singing. I figured it was fitting as the cries of raptors are pretty high-pitched. Oh, by the way, that eagle sound you hear in so much media? It's actually a red-tailed hawk. Eagles, for the most part, are kind of quiet. Also, this is what the egg would look like. In the solar region, eggs will generally have colors pertaining to the species they're going to hatch. And we can't possibly forget the shinies, right? I went for full-on neon-colored tones for these shinies for the sake of contrast. They look kind of 80s.
In terms of abilities, we have Gluttony and Soundproof as the 2 abilities you're most likely to come across. This bird loves to eat, plus it's a noisy little thing which makes it immune to noise-based attacks. Once a Gluttony Areole evolves into Soprano though, it's going to switch Gluttony for Intimidate to put that big toothy pattern to work. For the hidden ability, we're going to go for Areolate, which turns all normal type attacks into flying type ones and makes them a little more powerful.
So there we have the regional early route birds. Much like Bada-Boom and Bada-Zoom, you'd find these fairly frequently throughout the region, especially in or around cities and towns. The first 2 forms at least. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to catching you in the next video, but until then, take care. Bye!